Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about the eLearnSecurity Web Application Penetration Tester certification. All the information about this certification can be found on eLearnSecurity.com under certifications and then eWPT. This certification process is a 14-day certification process. The first 7 days will be hands-on lab environment where you'll have access to the lab for 7 days, and the final 7 days of the exam will be for writing your report. That report will be primarily what you're judged on for this certification, and in that report you need to include a few things. Obviously, basic information about the organization that you're penetration testing, the vulnerabilities that you discovered, as well as how to remediate those vulnerabilities. So to give some quick overview on what is tested in this certification, you can look down here on the knowledge domains. You'll see things like OWASP Top 10, cross-site scripting, SQL injection, understanding different web application attacks. Overall, the exam voucher costs $400. If you look in the cart here, the exam is $400. And the course material for this exam is provided through the INE platform. There's an INE premium subscription that you'll need to subscribe to get access to this course material. And then you'll work through the course material, and when you're done, you should be ready to take the eWAPT exam. I'm going to hop over now to the course material and kind of talk about what is covered in there. So here is the web application penetration testing material. Scroll down a bit, and this is our very first section here, the penetration testing process. Obviously, this is important. Maybe if you don't completely understand the penetration testing process, just understanding the overall process and how it applies to web applications. Here on the introduction section, two sections that I really like here are the Burp Suite Lab videos and the OWASP Zap videos as well. These are two very similar tools with similar functionality. They're both web application proxies, and it allows you to intercept traffic that you're sending to a web server and manipulate it for different types of attacks that you'll be using throughout the course material. What I like about this though is that Burp Suite is pretty popular, but OWASP Zap is a good alternative as well. There's some situations where Zap has actually been more helpful for me as a penetration tester, so it's nice that they include both of these tools in the course materials. I will say some information about Burp overall is a bit outdated. These days, Burp Suite is updated on almost a weekly basis with different features and such. So I don't really blame them for having this be a little bit out of date because Burp Suite is always making a lot of changes. Coming down here to information gathering, this section is very important, not only for the exam, the course material, but also for your understanding as a penetration tester overall. This subdomain enumeration section is very important, not only for the course materials, but if you're looking for, company-owned websites. Maybe you're assessing your own company. Maybe you're assessing a different company. You want to get an understanding of all the websites owned by your company. You can use some of these tools that are outlined in this course material. The crawling and fingerprinting section, spidering section here, I will say that for the new editions of Burp Suite Community Edition, spidering is not included. You need to have Burp Suite Professional for that functionality. You can, for the course material, download an old version of Burp Suite off of their website if you would like to, but it's not really that necessary to make it through the labs, I will say that much. So it is an option out there, but there's not really that much reason why you should need spidering. Now, these two sections are some of my favorite in this course material, the cross-site scripting and the SQL injection sections. And the reason why I like these two sections so much is that the labs are excellent for this section. If you did not know, there's 3 different types of cross-site scripting, and there's a few different types of SQL injection as well. If you are not 100% familiar with the different types of these attacks and how they are differentiated, either in impact to the website or in the payloads that you utilize to execute each of the attacks, these labs are excellent because you're going to go to one web application and it will have different routes where you'll be able to test each one of these attacks in their individual category, basically. So for example, for reflected cross-site scripting, there is one specific section of the website dedicated to that attack, and then you get to see how it differs from the other types of cross-site scripting attacks. Very useful for understanding all the different types of attacks. A cool section here is on beef. So if you're not familiar with the beef framework, this can be used to have users connect back to your host to try to steal cookies or take control of their computer. So this is a nice section to have here in terms of exploitation if you're looking at doing some social engineering. SQL injection, again, the lab here is excellent. I believe that these two sections on cross-site scripting and SQL injection in general are really worth the weight of this course material overall. It's kind of worth their weight in gold, if you like that saying. SQL injection, again, it's very similar lab to the cross-site scripting, where you'll have the different types of SQL injection, each individually outlined, and you'll get to exploit each of them individually so you can understand the differences between the different types of SQL injection. Really helped to clarify some of my knowledge on these attacks and give me a good understanding of the different types of attacks that I could see. The authorization, authentication, and session security, these sections kind of go together because it's about authentication, authorization to your web applications. I think that this is pretty good. It talks about cookies, very basic authentication. One thing that I will say is a little bit missing out of the course material that is very popular these days is the prevalence of JSON Web Tokens. Actually, there is a Udemy class on JSON Web Tokens. If you look up on Google, Udemy JWT hacking should be the first result here, hacking and securing JSON Web Tokens. If you're looking at enhancing your knowledge of some of the different types of attacks, against JWTs. This course is excellent as well. Has some great labs on the different types of attacks that you can utilize to hack JWTs. So if you're looking for something related to authorization in modern web apps, this is a great course to use as supplemental materials. Again, JWTs is not covered at all in the INE course material. Definitely a section that needs a little bit of updating. Here, again, we have another section that is not really that relevant anymore, Flash. Flash has actually been kind of prevented by Google in Google Chrome these days. You can't even run Flash in Google Chrome. So this has become kind of a deprecated and old section. I will say that if you are in some organizations, maybe they have some older web applications, this could still be relevant in some organizations. But overall, Flash attacks are not that prevalent these days. The HTML5 section, I will say this course, the cross-origin resource sharing section, the videos in the lab are excellent. This is actually an attack that I did not really understand that well coming into the course material, and the way that it's explained here really helped to clarify my understanding of that attack. So I really like this section. I think that this is still relevant and is a good section for understanding that particular attack. Some file and resource attacks, other types of attacks like clickjacking, and here a web services section. Again, I would say that this web services section is a little bit out of date since it only focuses on SOAP web services. There's a whole other category of web services these days, which is based on REST. Basically, the difference between SOAP and REST is that SOAP uses XML for the data structure, while REST uses JSON for the data structure. So it would be nice to have some web services here, or APIs, that you can manipulate by using REST instead of SOAP. You can still find some SOAP web services and some websites that use SOAP as their backend these days, but I would say it's really not as prevalent as REST, because REST is just a little bit more popular, a little bit more easier to read, and it's kind of used by a lot more developers. So I think that this section could use a little bit of updating, but the cool thing about this section is that there's some really good attack vectors in here that not only apply to SOAP web services, but also apply a little bit to REST when you're looking for things like SQL injection or other attack vectors. So I would say this SOAP section is kind of similar to REST, it talks a little bit about finding WSDLs, which is a definition of a SOAP web service. There's similar things for the REST side, like Swagger documentation and things like that. But I think that this web services section could use a little bit of updating to include REST as well. A section that I really liked and kind of surprised me as like a special treat at the end of the course material was actually this penetration testing NoSQL databases. So NoSQL databases are actually pretty prevalent these days. There's Redis, CouchDB, Postgres. There's all types of new databases coming out all the time that are open source, or some of them are also sponsored by companies. So I think that this section, it doesn't have all the information about all the NoSQL databases that are out there, but I think it gives you a good understanding of how some of the attacks like SQL injection could be utilized against these databases. It goes into a pretty good detail on the different types of SQL injections that you can perform and maybe the different syntax that applies to some of these databases. I think that this section is a nice special treat on some more modern database attacks if you ever run into some of these different types of databases. So overall, my thoughts on the eWAPT certification is that the exam really does a great job of kind of following one for one on the exploits that you learn in the course material. It's really like a one-for-one match, like, hey, I learned this exploit in the course material, boom, I can apply it over here in the exam. So there's a really great one-to-one match, and there's a little bit of creativity that you can also apply in the web application exam as well. So do not limit yourself if you are stuck on this exam. You might be thinking in the actual document for this exam, it says that there are some users that interact with the web application. There's some interesting vectors that I know could be applied through the exam. And but one thing that I found during the exam is that that was not working for me. So if you do get stuck on that scenario, where you're kind of waiting for a user input, if that makes sense, don't harbor yourself down to that one idea and just get stuck on it. Make sure you're going back through your enumeration process. Make sure that you're looking for other types of attack vectors where you might not have looked before. If you made it to a certain point, you really have everything in front of you that you need, but you just need to look for that little extra something that might be appearing a little bit suspicious to you if you're looking at some of the pages that are referenced by the web application throughout. So if you are stuck in the exam, do not give up hope. There's a lot of help out on the eLearnSecurity forums. That is very helpful, and there are other ways of actually exploiting this exam as well. I've read out on the forums that there's actually 3 or 4 different ways to get to the end solution of the exam, so do not get frustrated and do not limit yourself on creativity for the attacks. But overall, for the exam, the course material, I feel like if you're getting into web application penetration testing, or maybe you feel that it's one of your weaknesses, I think that this course material does a good job of covering a lot of the basics. Maybe it's not the most up-to-date modern version of the attack, but it is still something that is relevant today. If you don't have an understanding of the different types of cross-site scripting, different types of SQL injection, I think that those 2 labs, like I said, are really worth their weight in gold just for this course material alone. But if you are maybe a more advanced web application penetration tester, I don't think that the exam would be all that challenging for you. So take that for what you will. Maybe it would be worth waiting to get more updated course materials so you can see those different types of attacks that can be used on more modern web applications. But again, if you feel that web application pen testing is a weakness, I think that this course material is excellent at providing you a strong baseline that you can use to further research those modern applications as well. So, I mean, it's totally up to you, obviously, how you're going to spend your money and time. I feel that if you are very basic on the web application side, that this course just gives you a good basic understanding of web application attacks overall. Definitely take it for some parts not being updated, but if you understand, that those are not necessarily the most valid, I think you'll be fine and you'll still learn a lot from the course material. So, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little review, and I'll see you next time.